Yeah, I played it around the time I had my idea for the eco horror short story. So I was like, maybe there's like an eco
Oh,
horror
nice.
game. Yeah, where you have to like you get random encounters with your son and I don't know, you got to make decisions. I got stuck though because I was like, I feel like it should be like parenting decisions, and I was like, I don't know anything about parenting.
Hmm.
I'm stuck.
I wonder if you could make the random decision or the random sorry, if you could have the randomness. So I feel like part of the more randomness of Outer Wilds, it works because like everything is ultimately connected back to the main story or some thread.
Hmm.
I'm sure. I don't know. Could you have like random encounters with like fixed outcomes or like I don't know. How could you solve that problem, I wonder?
Well, there's part of me that wants to say like randomness and a sense of curation are going to be inherently at odds in like a way that's not resolvable. But I'm actually trying to do that in I'm trying to make like a tabletop RPG system for that.
Hmm,
But I think there's some degree of randomness that can still feel thematic and like create that sense of wonder because that's really what I'm interested in. Is that kind of what you're talking about too? Like the sense of like wonder and exploration and things tying together?
yeah.
Hmm.
How could you solve for randomness where it doesn't feel like things are connected? Oh,
So do you want the feeling that they're not connected? Or
no,
do you
you want them to feel
okay.
connected ultimately.
Hmm. Okay, so I actually over Thanksgiving, I did like a little thing. I analyzed some of Del Toro Quest, which I so strongly recommend. There's such quick reads too. They're so
What are
much
they? Sorry?
fun. Del Toro Quest.
Ah,
It's by
yes.
Emily Rada. And basically I'm I made a pyramid and the top is the boss and the boss has to be like super curated to feel satisfying. It's like, again, if the theme is greed, the boss is really greedy, maybe it like eats everything in its path and they have to find some way to defeat it by making it eat something or an overeat or something, which is like a problem with greed. And then um as you go down the period, the interactions become less they're less thematically or they're less important to the story and they're also like and therefore they have to be less tight. Like the boss is supposed to be both in a game and in these stories, it's supposed to be the place where the player or the protagonist show what they've learned. They
Hmm,
kind of like apply their lesson about greed. But I kind of put the lowest layer as like omens and warnings. So it's like when you first start reading the book, it's like they go into a town and um they enter a tavern, everyone's overstuffing themselves and they're eating so much and they're like vomiting. So that's to just give you a sense of like, hey, there's some theme here. So my idea is like the top tier, like the boss still has to be really curated in order to feel good. Like the Outer Wild story has to be someone has to be pretty careful about putting everything together to make it feel good. But like along the way the smaller things can kind of be like generated with some randomness and it's still okay. It's like is it a bunch of people who overstuff themselves or is it um I don't know, like rats who take everything from you.
I see. That's interesting. But as long as you're building towards a consistent theme,
Mhm.
that's really the more important thing. That makes sense.
I'm like really I'm really into recreating the sense of wonder. Like I think that's the appeal of sci-fi and fantasy for me. So I'm trying to find out all these ways to capture it so I can recreate it.
Hmm,
It's also interesting, Dimitri, when you're talking about freedom and how part of the sell of these history games is like it's so realistic that you have the freedom to XYZ. I don't even know what it is. But it's so interesting to me because freedom is such a loaded word. It's like, especially like in the US, it's like freedom is so important, you know, you gotta let people be their own people and that sort of thing. Um, but it's interesting because it's so easy to have a two-dimensional idea of freedom. Like, giving me possibilities gives me freedom. The more possibilities, the more freedom I have, the better it is. But that's not always the case, and I feel like ooh, sometimes that theming and that guideline, that the guidance can also lead to freedom of choice.
Wait, what do you mean?
I don't quite know because now I'm focused on the moon.
Oh, me too.
Oh, come on, please. Oh,
Wait, hold on. We still have a photo of the
we
moon.
still have a
Sorry.
photo of the moon. Um, like, would you? Okay, I know you're kind of focusing now, so feel free to take your time.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Heck yeah.
I made it. Oh
Oh,
no.
no.
Never mind. I bounced off the
Ah,
moon.
man. Would you say you
Oh.
feel freedom in this game?
Now that everything's broken. Um, it's interesting. I feel a lot more freedom in this game than I do in like more open-ended sorts of games like that where so I think the freedom in like a historical game is it's like it's like the freedom to, combine a number of mechanics any which way or that sort of thing. Whereas in
Mhm,
this game, I don't know, there's freedom of like exploration in this game. Like you cannot actually affect anything in the game, but you have the freedom like I have the freedom to just hop out of the ship right now and just like zoom around, giants deep like this. I don't know. Maybe if I did a more useful sort of thing instead, I could gain some sort of insight which advances the story. Um,
I guess when I think of freedom in this game, I think of, like, the freedom to choose my path and
mhm.
say, I think I started with Giant's Deep. I can't remember. Just remember being so scared, but, like, I can start with Giant's Deep, or I can start with something else. Were you not in your spaceship?
No,
Um,
I had the freedom to decide that too.
but yeah, it's like I guess it's the freedom of choice within the shape of the narrative?
Oh, that's interesting. So, like, does the story tell you that you have the freedom to, like, take over feudal Japan however you want? Or
Right.
does the story actually not tell you anything and you have to sort of figure out what you want to do or, like, what is important? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
'cause, like, if freedom is a big part of the marketing of these history games, it's kinda like the freedom is you get to pretend to be a big historical figure and do it your way, but you're still doing the thing. I guess here you're also kinda doing the thing, but there's more variability in how it plays out.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the sense of freedom comes from the, like, I think the sense of freedom here comes from, like, the lack of direction.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, How do I hold on.
Freedom is a hard thing for me to talk about because I don't think about it that much. That's what I'll say.
Makes sense. What was I gonna say?
You're talking about how the freedom comes from, like, not, um, having guidance, I think?
Having Wait, say that again, sorry? My
It
connection
was
cut out a
something
little.
I think it was something like freedom comes from not having guidance or not having direction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that sort of thing. The fact that there's no I don't know, there are no cutscenes in the game, there's no, like, character who you know, checks in on you or checks in with you every so often. Like, even Gabbro, who's, like, in the loop and he's aware of the loop, at
Yeah.
a certain point, the dialogue with him is just like the same dialogue. It I don't know. I think the lack of guidance, um, and the fact that you really have to do all this like on your own, um, you know, it sort of creates this sense that you have like, a more significant agency and you're not just going through motions. Even if you are like just reading instructions on one planet and then going to another planet. I think
Mhm.
that's part of also why like other people like that system emerges of like you play the game with somebody who's already played the game
Mhm.
because the game doesn't offer you any guidance really, like where you would expect to have like a tutorial, not a tutorial, but like where you would expect to maybe have like a mentor character or like somebody who knows more than you do. I think that's maybe the thing too, is that nobody else in the game knows the whole picture already. It's not like there's anybody sitting on like secret knowledge that they reveal to you ultimately. It's like anything that you put together, you sort of put it together on your own. And so filling the niche of a character like that is, somebody else who's already played the game.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So like for instance, when I was playing the game the first time through, um, I was asking this friend of mine who was overseeing, overs basically overseeing my playthrough, like how do you get on the moon? Like how do you get on the quantum moon? And she wouldn't tell me because she wanted me to like figure it out on my own. So I contrived this system of just like using the little like Nomai launch shuttle things that you can call down through the gravity cannons. I tried to line up I tried to like bully the quantum moon into like appearing like in the like that I so I could see it through the cockpit of one of those shuttles.
Mhm.
And I was like, the problem with my approaches to the quantum moon is that I have not been going quickly enough. So I managed to
Mhm.
shoot myself. It took me like 2 or 3 loops worth of trying, but I managed to like shoot myself straight shot out of the gravity cannon at the quantum moon. And
Okay.
obviously it didn't work. Like I died immediately. There was like a special like you died immediately kind of thing. The screen just went like white static. Um, and I told my friend, and she was like, how did you even imagine that that would be the solution? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And in a normal game, you'd expect, I don't know, maybe that there would be some sort of character, who would like make that comment to you or like advise you against
Mm.
doing that, or you'd get like an achievement for it or something. Um, I don't know. In Outer Wilds, like the fact that, oh no, sorry, where did it? The fact that it like I don't know, the fact that it barely even acknowledges what you're doing,
Yeah.
it feels more like whatever I'm doing in this game, like I'm earning.
Mhm.
And it also invites the presence of another player to sort of like push back on you a little. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think part of what makes the game feel so congenial is like if you are going through it with a friend, it's somebody you know, or it's somebody who you can like bond with as you are playing the game.
Right.
So the game is not even just the game. It's like a way for people to, sort of come
Yeah.
together and like understand each other better, which also, of course, is a theme in the game. If you look at how, you are sort of interacting with the records of the Nomai. If you make it to the Quantum Moon, you interact with Solanum
Mm.
as
Oh,
like two
yeah.
people sort of very far removed from their cultures trying to understand each other.
Right.
There's a sort of like constant feedback loop between like what the mechanics of the game are requiring you to do and what the narrative tells you is going on that I think is like really the key to why this game is so one of a kind.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
That's interesting. I'm stuck on a previous thought, which is it I feel like Outer Wilds is kind of an anti-wiki game. It
An
like
anti what?
wiki,
Oh yeah.
like if you read a wiki that tells you what happens, it like you almost don't want to because it ruins the feeling of discovery. Um, which I guess would be maybe an argument for spoilers existing. But yeah, it's like But having someone else as a companion is just such a different feeling, and in some games, like, I think of a game like Don't Starve Together, where it's a super wiki game. It doesn't tell you things, but you have to look them up or else you fail and you die, and that's, like, horrible,
Mhm.
and all your progress is erased, whereas this one you fail and you die, and that's part of it. It's integrated. But, yeah, that one's like a super wiki game, and if you hop into it with someone else, you're like, "Okay, here's all the things that you have to do. You have to learn this, this, and this, and, quick, we're running out of time." Whereas this one, it's like, yeah, they're like, "I'm not gonna tell you," and then you do it, and they're like, "Why would you do that?" And so it's like, it is a companionable game. But you were saying,
Mhm.
like, what was the last thing you were saying about what makes this game so, like, special?
Oh, I mean, that was there was another thought that just occurred to me, but that was all, that I was going to say at the time.
Oh, I wasn't didn't process it because I was too busy holding on to my other thoughts, so would you repeat it for me?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Basically, the idea that, um, so there are the mechanics of like exploring that sort of dovetail with the narrative of like scientists exploring the universe, but also the idea that the game lends itself to sort of being played with a companion because, the game doesn't give you much at all by way of explicit guidance. It also dovetails narratively because you end up, you know, in the main game corresponding with Solanum on the Quantum Moon. In the DLC, something similar happens also. Um, you know, and
Mm,
and I said that this is a good example of like the narrative really like just highlighting what is really good about the mechanics and like really making it sing
yeah.
by giving it form with story. There's a thing I've been reading this book about the like ancient Greek mystery religions recently, um, which were like these sort of secret societies, um, with like rituals that only the initiates got to see, and like even in the ancient world where there was not as much of a concept of like introspection or like hyper individualistic thinking, it was said that like seeing the rites, like going through the rites and being initiated into these mystery religions like could change you as a person for the rest of your life. Like you would come out and your soul would be changed by the experience of the ritual. And there were people who in antiquity they would like, they would get out there and like they'd be like, I know the secret that's revealed at the end of like the Eleusinian mysteries. Um it's like an ear of grain. And the thing is, if you haven't experienced the ritual and you hear that it's all about like an ear of grain, you're just like, oh, that's stupid. Do you know what I mean? Like they would share
Yeah.
this secret in a way that made it seem like very small and silly. Um, but if you want, that came to mind when you were talking about wiki games versus not wiki games, because like the point of a game like Don't Starve Together is to like sort of create the means by which to have a good time in the game, right? Like it's cool to play Don't Starve Together once you have like real cool technology, and you can go to like interesting places and do things. And in order to do that, you have to know, you know, the most expedient ways to make that happen. In this game, though, like if someone asked what happened, if someone asked for the plot of Outer Wilds or like what happens at the end of Outer Wilds, and you were like, "Oh, you play a song with your friends." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'd be like, "Oh, okay, that sounds," you know what I mean? Like it sounds
Right.
underwhelming, but like, obviously to go through the whole sequence of the game and then go through that whole sequence at the end, and then you hear everybody just like singing a song or like, playing the song around the campfire together. It's like I don't know. It strikes me as the same kind of thing. It's like you become like initiated into the game. There's a
Yeah.
sense of an experience which like is cheapened by any explicit sort of discussion of it. Um,
Yeah.
mhm.
And that especially that image of everyone playing music by a campfire, it's a very lonely game. at times, which is why it's nice to have another player as your companion. And it's a very lonely game, and that last scene is like everyone coming together. But yeah, you don't really get it until you've been through it. But that's so interesting to think of classifying games as like I mean the simplified version is product versus process, but I like the way you describe it where yeah, Don't Starve Together, you talk about the end game, it's like, wow, that's so cool. I want to be there. And you talk about the end of this and it's like, what? And if you talk about the journey of getting to the end of Don't Starve Together, it's like you have to build all these machines and things are going to come. They're just trying to destroy your stuff and beat you up. It's like, oh my God, that sounds awful. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe to some people it sounds great. Maybe some people they're like, I want to get beaten up. That's wonderful. Um, and here I don't know that the yeah, I mean I think
Yeah, yeah.
describing the journey it sounds good.
Hmm.
But
The
yeah, it's
idea
almost
too
like
of wiki games versus non-wiki games. It's
yeah.
such a real thing. I never thought of it like that.
I also wonder if there's something there if we're talking about Don't Starve versus this, where Don't Starve is like building these processes to become more efficient. Whereas here, I think that maybe the thing you're fundamentally doing as you're advancing versus when you start is not that different. You just have different knowledge and a different understanding of what's going on, but you're still doing the same things.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. The mechanics don't change. Anything you learn how to do, you are able to do from the beginning. Even the things that are built in like a more narrative, philosophical, focused way, like all of the things that the Nomai build, they don't accomplish they don't accomplish the end
Mm,
they were intended for. Whatever the Nomai contrived to build, like the thing that destroyed them all was like completely unrelated, like just utterly unrelated. Um, you know, not even touching on the stuff in the DLC, which happened separately. It's yeah, very different attitudes towards, I don't know, building certainly, but like, yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that's all.
What do you think of building too? Now I'm also thinking about like city builders and stuff.
Hmm.
Like I'm like, can you have a city builder that doesn't work towards the end?
Hmm.
Maybe you can't.
That doesn't work towards the end. What do you mean?
It doesn't. It's not about getting good at the end game. Can you have
Hmm.
something that has elements of a city builder like that?
Interesting. How would that work?
I don't know. Maybe we gotta talk about it in the ideas exchange. Ha ha ha.
I suppose so. The thing about the city builder is like, and the historical games too, is that like, every game ends eventually. Whether, basically even games that can go on forever, eventually you put them down,
Hmm.
or you stop playing them. I wonder, like, could you have a city builder game that like ends, or could you have a historical game where you know, like you don't win at the end or like that kind of thing, you know?
Interesting.
I shouldn't say you don't win at the end. Like, could you have a historical game where like there is an end that's like a real end? Because like even if it's like you've become the supreme civilization or whatever, it's very like and they lived happily ever after. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you just win and that's it. Like what if there was like a narrative end? I don't
So
know.
I feel like I have not played through Frostpunk, but I feel like it's interesting in this way.
Hmm.
It may have something to say about these questions. I don't know because I started playing it and I was like, wait, this game is meant to be hard. And then I stopped because I didn't want to play a hard game.
Sure.
But yeah, I wonder. Because do remember part of what I thought Frostpunk did interestingly was like it didn't hit me with like a hard failure state. Like I would start to do poorly and then it would be like the townspeople are really upset and if you keep doing this, they're gonna be more upset and they're gonna leave the town." And I was like, "That's interesting because that does make failing interesting." So I feel like maybe it's something to say, but I don't want it to be a hard game. I want it to be an easy game.
Mm.
All right, so it's been an hour and 18 minutes. I think my brain is a little fried. So I'm probably close to wrapping up. Do we have any other thoughts or things we want to discuss about Outer Wilds?
I'm
I don't
all
think
right.
so. That was fun though.
Yeah, that was super cool. I feel like I discovered a lot about the game and like it brought back a lot of ideas that I had rattling in the background. So, yeah, in that case, I will wrap it up. Thank you so much, Dimitri. Thank you so much, Lauren, for joining. This is recorded. I'm probably going to post it on like YouTube or something and also in the channel so people can see it at any time. But this was really awesome. This is exactly what I was like hoping this would be. And a
Oh yeah.
couple more process things are that like I kind of gave an arbitrary idea for next month's discussion, but obviously like feel free to suggest things that you're interested in. If there's something that feels more urgent or more interesting to you, totally shout it out and then we can talk about it next month. So yeah, thank you both for joining. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I already have, by the pleasure of y'all's company. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
thanks for
for
setting
hosting
it up.
this.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.
All right, see you.